Welcome to Shop Talk, everyone. I'm Brandi.
And I'm James, and we talk about all things related to cross-cultural workers and mental health.
Thanks for joining us, and welcome to Season 4.
Welcome to Shop Talk. We're excited today to have Danielle Wheeler. She's a spiritual director and founder of Velvet Ashes, a community for women serving cross-culturally. She and her family served in China from 2006 to 2015. She's the director of spiritual formation for Velvet Ashes, leading spiritual retreats and formation practices. She lives near Joplin, Missouri with her husband, their 4 children, and their cat-sized dog. So great to have you, Danielle.
Thanks so much, James. It's really great to be here.
What kind of a dog is it?
A multi-poo.
Oh, yeah.
Strictly a no pet family. All the years we were, overseas and going back and forth. So pets weren't very compatible, and we just thought we were never going to be a pet family. And then our kids all teamed up and said, "That's all we want for Christmas."
How do you say no to that when they're on the same page? It's like,
right. Yeah. So we saved. And I grew up with dogs. My husband grew up with cats. And so we compromised on the cat.
You got a cat-sized dog.
There you go. Better than a dog-sized cat.
Danielle, we're really glad to have you here today. And I want to hear a little bit about what you do with Velvet Ashes. Been aware of Velvet Ashes for a while now. I've done some traveling and work in the Caucasus, and that's when I first heard about it. It was a gal that I was talking with there said, "Have you heard of Velvet Ashes?" I was like, "No," and she told me about it. I thought, wow, wonderful thing. And so it's been kind of in my periphery for a while. And then, James talked about having you on the podcast, and I started looking into it more. I thought, oh my goodness, I just felt like it was like a balm coming over me. Like it just sounded so wonderful. So I wonder if you could give us a little introduction to it and just what it's about.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary in November, and it's hard to believe that it's been a decade. It started just with a desire for connection, and we thought we were starting a blog, and it did start as that, and very quickly grew into more. But I'm sure, as you well know, as a woman on the field, there was just this deep desire for connecting and being seen and known by other people that understand. And the unique challenge that you have your community back in your passport country where you came from that loves you deeply and wants to support you in any way they can, but they really there's no way they can really understand what it's like to be living your life. And the relationships that you have there, locally where you are, can be sweet and deep and rich, especially the longer you're there. But at the same time, there's no way they can know what you've come from and what it's like to be you living there. And so what I was longing for was that connection with other women that understood the life that I was living because they were living it as well. And it can be so isolating to be on the field. And anytime that I got to be with a group of women that shared the same kind of life and the same challenges and joys, it just was so filling. And we thought, how can we have this connection when we're geographically separated? And so that's where the idea of the blog started. And one of the very first blog posts that we put out was a woman sharing her story and just saying, "I'm not okay. And is this the place that I can say that? Because I don't know where I can say that." And that fear of, if people knew, then I would be pulled off the field. And the fear of that and all the levels of loss and unknown, all the layers. But it was, I need a place to say this, and I need people that understand that. And kind of just putting it out there is this the place? Are these the people where this is safe to express this? And that resonated so deeply for so many. And so very quickly, we just had this large global community beyond anything that we had planned or expected. And from there, we thought, well, we have this big kind of global community, but we want to create space for the intimate conversations. And so we started, back before the days of Zoom, we started, online connection groups where people women could connect with other women that were living the same kind of story. And so did it back on Skype. Everybody remembers Skype. That was where that happened. And, so many of the conversations happening both in the blog and then in the connection groups were centered around burnout. We are all just so tired. We are trying so hard. And we desperately need refreshment and renewal. And I don't know how to get that. Furlough is supposed to be that, and often it's more exhausting than being on the field. And so those questions just kept swirling. And so we just really, as an experiment, said, what if we did an online retreat where the retreat comes to you wherever you are, and just really did it, as an experiment, not knowing. This was, again, before online retreats were a thing.
Yes,
And
before COVID, the before times.
exactly. Before everybody moved online. This was motivated by deep need and desire. And so we had to figure out a way. And so we put it out there and said, anybody want to do this? And then we had 700 women saying, yes, we want to do that. So
did you like slam your computer closed and go, ah?
Yeah, no. There's too many zeros.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Were you connecting to people from particular parts of the world? Like you've got some Asia experience, or was it just everyone?
Yeah, we really did have a broad community. Several of the, core team, the leadership team, we were from the same organization, serving in the same country. But, when we first started, we said, well, do we want this to just kind of be for us, or do we want
Sure.
it to be for the broader community? And we said, well, I think it's not, the connection is not tied to the geography, right? And that's what
Right.
so many women have been surprised about. If they, we have some, specific kinds of connection groups where you can be with other women that are in a similar life stage. But what women continually find surprising is I'm in a group that's just open to anyone, and we're from all different parts of the world, and yet we have so many of the same connections and struggles and joys, and just this cross-cultural life has so many of the same deep, transformative, such a deeply transformative journey in so many of the same ways. And so to be able to connect with other people in that way has been so sweet and surprising. And so, yeah, and again, just putting the blog out there in the beginning, it kind of very naturally and quickly went global to all different countries, all different organizations, denominations. It was for everyone.
What'd you do with those first 700 interested in something?
Yeah, so we put together some content and put it out there and just said, if you can get away, find an Airbnb, a hostel, a guest house, then go and get away, even if it's just by yourself. And if you have some other people that you want to meet up with or connect with and do it together, then gather a group and do it together. If none of that is possible and you are like, I can just go in my bedroom. And for me, that meant like literally locking the door. And my husband's like, I got the kids. And so I just took that space, and we were all just blown away from, just to set aside an extended time to be with the Lord and to allow him to tend to us, the incredible power of that. And we walked away going, oh, wow, like there actually is renewal, and the Lord, it can fill us where we are. And that breathes so much life into each one of us. And so we said, okay, I think this is a thing. And I think we're going to continue doing this. And so, yes, we have continued that. We do an online retreat in the spring in April. And that includes online, videos. And then we do one in the fall that we call our Unplugged, which is, print off this guide, be completely unplugged and just go be with the Lord, whether that's in solitude or in community. And so that has become a rhythm for our community, and very, very life-giving and filling. And the stories continue to flow on the blog and through social media, and we do connection groups, and we do book club, and we share recipes, and it's a space to do life together across the distance. and to have that kind of community and support, to know that you're not alone, and to know that there are other women that are there, and we get to kind of link arms across the globe and walk together, pointing each other to Jesus. And it has been, beyond what we ever would have thought or planned for, and just an incredible journey of watching the Lord tend to us through each other, and been such a joy to be part of.
It sounds like some of the type of connection that is happening is what happens with TCKs, where it's this shared identity and not fitting in and being different and having two places that is bringing people together. It's that the great mystery of, wait, you're from a different country serving in another country than my two, but it's this shared experience that brings deep, deep understanding and connection.
And I imagine when, the first blog post came out, that when you said, the gal who wrote it said, "I'm not okay." And I mean, I felt that way. And I know so many other people have felt that way. And you struggle, well, I'm talking about my experience, right? You want to push that down, that not okayness, you want to push it down. Well, you're still not okay, even if you don't want to look at it. And it kind of like creates a cycle, of just like pushing it down more and more and more. And so I just imagine it gave women this freedom to look at themselves and look at their lives and say, you know what? I'm not okay. And the Lord sees that. And that could be such a stepping off point toward renewal and healing too.
Exactly, to bring it into the light rather than stuffing it down. The beauty of that alone, and the power of that, and then also the ability to resource one another and point each other to places that can help meet that need, resources. That's been a huge part of the ministry, has been how do we let each other know what's out there.
And taking a step back, your ministry is called Velvet Ashes. And I was hoping you could explain to our listeners a little bit about what that means and where that came from.
Yes. People always ask, what in the world does that mean? And it, as we were, seeking the Lord, asking, what do you want us to call ourselves? What is our name? And just, we all know there's power in the name. And the 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 imagery that we were longing for was something that can grow and thrive in difficult places. And so we began just looking through different desert fauna and came across a tree called the Velvet Ash tree. So it is a type of ash tree. And there were so many, I love nature, and I love connecting with God in nature, because there's always so many levels and layers. And we just really fell in love with this tree, and the beauty that it can thrive in extreme conditions, both extreme cold and extreme heat, but tending, with tending. And there was another layer, when the tree releases its leaves, it actually leaves scars on the branches where the scar was. And that resonated deeply for us, as we all carry our scars. But the scars are actually in the shape of a smile. That there really can be beauty and joy after the loss and the pain and the scars form. And that resonated for us, and so many of us that have experienced that reality. And yeah, the Lord has continued to just give us sweet connections through trees and nature, and of course the verse about beauty from ashes resonated as well. And so yeah, we are Velvet Ashes and the Velvet Ash tree.
What are some of the ways things have changed in the last 10 years of engaging with this global worker community? Ways in particular, I mean, how did things change kind of in this now post-COVID landscape too? Like, what does that look like? People's needs and how you're meeting them?
Yes. Yeah. So COVID, like we were talking about earlier, made everything go online. And in many ways, we kind of were already postured for that, because we had already said, we have to connect across the distance. And so we were already doing online retreats and online connection groups. And so we were kind of already positioned for that, which was just the Lord's provision. And, of course, with COVID, saw a huge wave of people returning. And so it became an opportunity for us. We had done that in the past, but to continue to walk with people in that re-entry space, which is such a vulnerable and tender raw space. And so to continue to walk with people, that it's not just, okay, you're overseas and so now you're part of the community and then you leave, and not like you are forever changed. That's been a sweet and tender place to continue to walk with women and to continue to provide community, because that can be one of the most painful places for people returning, is how do I find people that understand and they get what I've been through, and in so many ways, they can't. And so to connect with other women who are going through the same kind of things is just really a balm for their souls.
So do you have groups particularly tailored for those in reentry, for women that are coming
We
back?
offer
Okay.
connection groups that are for those in reentry, and then offer resources, and always have conversations happening.
Yeah, I hear you talking about women coming back to their home country, their passport country, whatever. And it is this experience of like, this was my identity overseas, and it was so hard, and life was just so, so challenging. Like you're living on the edge of what you feel like you can even sustain. But there's this identity to it, and then you go move back to your home context. It's like, I just don't know where I fit anymore. And that feeling doesn't really go away for a while. It takes quite a while to adjust and to figure out a new normal. So I'm glad that you have this with Velvet Ashes where people can connect, women can connect and kind of understand
Yeah.
each other in that.
Yes. Yeah. For so many, I thought I would feel settled much quicker than I am. And how long does this actually take?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's just fiercely lonely too.
Yes.
It is grief and the readjustment, and yeah, it just takes so much time to find your footing in it.
Do you find other demographics or life stages or particular phases in a transition that people really are reaching out for help? You kind of mentioned transitioning back to passport country. What
Mhm.
about other themes?
Yeah, well, certainly as women are transitioning to the field, they're just looking who knows how to do this and how
Yeah.
can I connect? And, from things like when we say we share recipes, it's not like that's like a survival thing. It's not just, oh, here, this is a fun thing that ladies do. It's like, no, we're trying to figure out how to survive and how to do this life. And so that's actually like a lifeline to offer women of, here's how you can do this in your context. So certainly, transitioning onto the field, we have, there's so many single ladies out there that, experience their own levels of loneliness. And so they want to connect with other women that are living this kind of story, that have made the same kind of sacrifices. And then, but on the other side, there are married women who really need support for their marriages and need, are looking for that. And we have several women who are in cross-cultural marriages. And so looking for, where are the other people that are living this story, and not wanting to be alone in that as well. And then, we always have lots of conversations for mothers, as they're trying to parent TCKs and all of the levels of complexity with that. And then even within that group, what does it mean to parent a TCK with special needs? And, so there's all different kinds of levels of connection, where women are like, oh yeah, I'm not the only one out there. And it's just the sweetness of knowing that, of, okay, there are other people, and I'm not alone.
And I wonder, as you interact with these women, if you get a sense of, the struggle between wanting to do and wanting to produce, to have something to show to your supporters and show for your work versus this ability to sit in your belovedness and sit in just knowing that you're so so beloved and so seen by God. And I wonder if you see that in women. I mean, I would imagine, especially with women working cross culturally, that that's a big struggle.
Mm,
Especially if
absolutely.
you have four hungry mouths begging at your door. Mom, mom.
Yes. Yeah. I have experienced in my own life, and then in the lives of so many women, this deep, pervasive lie that our identity, our worth, our value is tied to what we do and to what we accomplish, what we produce. And that leaves us feeling constantly like we're not enough. We're not doing enough. And to that is my heart's passion, is for just experiencing the transformation, the freedom from that lie that I am beloved, and that requires no accomplishment, no producing, and just that place of resting in my belovedness is my heart's passion for people to experience. And I think, no matter who you are, that's the invitation of God, to experience your belovedness. But it is such a pervasive and foundational lie, I think, within the cross-cultural community, that we are trying so hard to prove ourselves to God
And to supporters.
and to supporters, exactly, that we're worthy, that we're doing something significant for Him, that God expects us to do something for Him. And yeah, I think it's dangerously pervasive, and it keeps us. Yeah, there's just a huge block that happens in our relationship with God when that's the relationship of he's the boss and I'm the worker. And we use that term all the time, the cross-cultural worker, like our identity is worker. And yeah, there's such freedom that God offers us. And I think, when he says, I no longer call you servants, but friends. And what does it mean to have friendship with Jesus? What does it mean to live in a deep love relationship where we're not forced to produce for Him? And I think that language can make people nervous, but like, what about the Great Commission? Like,
about obedience.
Yes. And I think the irony in all of that is that it's when you embrace your belovedness and when you are freed from that lie, it's we know cognitively it's a lie. Like, we can see that, we can name that's a lie, but we believe it in our hearts and our souls, and then we live out of that. And so to be free from that lie actually produces deep, lasting fruit. We're concerned about we're going to lose the fruit if we stop working. And the irony is you don't stop working, maybe for a season, to like rewire, reorient, allow the Lord's deep transformation. But once there is,
which is still work. I would just say that work looks different.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is it's the work of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And our posture in that is to open and receive. And that takes a lot of, creating space and sitting and being in the posture of allowing the Holy Spirit to do the work, rather than I've got to do this work. I've got to figure this out. I've got to change.
Right. Do just the right disciplines and right in the right order at the right time of day.
Right.
Exactly.
Sounds a lot like it would be based all on what I was doing, which I don't think is what we find in a relational God. I think women have it twice as hard, particularly those who are raising kids on the field, because it's now in all realms of their life, this, I mean, legitimate, but desire for productivity. And then you lose some access to, like, I don't know how my kids are doing because I can't see any other kids that are like them. So you're even working harder, but it's in like this vacuum that you can't really measure. And for the single women, they wind up, because they're 25% of the global worker community, picking up a lot of slack, whether it's they've been specifically asked or they've just pulled that upon themselves of, oh, well, I guess I can work till 9. I don't have any mouths to feed, or 11 or 12 or.
Yeah.
And sometimes the expectation that the single gals will just be the aunties, and maybe they don't
Right.
want to be the aunties.
They'll babysit, they'll just live together, even if they don't aren't a good
Right.
fit for each other. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Right. And in our community that we lived in Central Asia, it was isolated, but there was a cross-cultural community there. And there was ample opportunity for comparison. There was always someone who was a
Oh,
better language learner, who looked like they had the parenting thing down, and or who was just really, really relating well to the culture that we were working in. And so there was always someone who seemed like they had it together more. And like, well, that perspective is so destructive, instead of just shifting and just saying, I'm going to rest in this belovedness and continuing to rest in it, not as a goal to produce more, produce better, but to rest in it. And then eventually, yes, there would be this goodness and overflow from that. But yeah, it's tricky. It's an easy thing to fall into with just how much am I doing? Am I doing enough?
I'm not worried about, what I produce. I've released that, and I'm actually like committed to my role as mother, for example. But but that lie is still underneath there when we're comparing, well, look at how this mother is mothering, and look at how her kids are behaved, and look at how they speak the language, and all those layers of comparison are touching that lie that what I do determines my value and my worth. And yeah, God has freedom for us in that.
We sent our eldest to a local preschool, and for other kids, it would have been fine. It was not great for her, but we thought this is what we're going to do because, oh my goodness, our kid's going to go in there and she's going to learn the local language. She's going to have local friends. And really, it was about us looking good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't great for her. We still talk about it today. Remember that preschool? Yeah, I know.
I have a very, very similar story.
Our director was finally like, hey guys, you don't have to do this. And I appreciate him saying that because we somehow needed to hear that. Like, oh yeah, we don't have to do this to all of us.
I wonder, Danielle, you and Brandi are both talking about belovedness, but I think for people who don't always know on a daily basis what that even is, do you want to just unpack that a little bit?
I would say that's something better experienced than explained. And I think,
Wait, are you a spiritual director?
I am. I am. Again, that's something that we can understand cognitively in our minds, but to experience it in our hearts and souls, that we are beloved, that we are cherished by God. And again, that's not just knowing it in our minds, that's having these experiences of receiving God's love. And when you are in that place of feeling like you're not measuring up, of here's the ideal cross-cultural worker, and I continually fail to measure up to that ideal, I feel not enough. And God says, you are my beloved child. In you I am well pleased. To be able to receive and experience that.
Like full stop. Like just sit
Right.
with that.
Yes. So yeah, if that feels like a question for people of, what does that mean? And you asked if I'm a spiritual director, that I say find a spiritual director, sit with them and say, I want to know what it means to be beloved by God, and sit
I,
alone with
I
God.
want to experience what it means to be loved like that.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And offer space to let all the swirling thoughts, all your responsibilities, like let those settle, let those drift away, and just be in the presence of God and allow him to, he knows what you need better than anyone else. And so allow him to move, to touch, to speak, because he delights in that question, in that request.
Mhm.
What does it mean to be your beloved? Show me what that means.
Danielle, what was that journey like for you, getting to this place of being able to sit in your belovedness with God?
Well, that's a long story, and it is actually very tied to Velvet Ashes. I had, worked to start this. Again, we didn't know what we were starting, but it very quickly grew and along with a team of women. And, leading that was a huge responsibility and commitment that I felt like very tied to, of, okay, this is happening and look at all these women that, God's meeting their needs. And so I felt like, okay, whatever the organization needs, like that's my responsibility. I've got to carry that weight. And the Lord invited me to step away and to let go. And that felt terrifying. Because if I step away, we tend to have, pretty grand views of ourselves. We think that nothing could continue without us, or, it's all dependent upon us. And I think the Lord delights in showing us that that is not, in fact, the truth. But I wrestled for a long time with that invitation, but the Lord was very persistent in that, and saying, let go and step away. And again, it was fighting those lies of, if I'm not doing this, who am I? And it was, well, yeah, that's the question. And so let's go there. And so I did. I resigned and entered into a year of sabbatical, to a year of undoing. And it really was. The Lord unraveled, untangled a lot in me in that season. And then it was coming to a place of, okay, I don't have to do anything, that I can rest and be yours, whatever that means. And to be in that place, Ignatius would call that indifference, holy indifference, where it's whatever you want, Lord, that is what I want. And I'm not deeply attached to these things that I once found my identity in. And reaching that place of indifference, then your hands are open to receive what the Lord's inviting you to. And that was the case for me. And so he did invite me back to Velvet Ashes, into a different role, and to continuing some of what I had done before, which was in, leading the retreats, which was where, that was where, they say the world's deep need and your great delight meet. And that's where that was for me, and that role. And then, have moved into spiritual direction as well. And so, it was a very hard leap to let go and to move away from that, because I didn't know what would happen after that. And with all respect and love and honor for, Midwest housewives, like that was like the last thing I ever envisioned myself being. And yet I eventually came to a place, was like, okay, Lord, if that is your invitation for me, that's what I'll move into. And to be able to come to that place where before I needed that sense of accomplishing something for God, and had my ideas of what that needed to be. And God was very persistent in helping me to release that.
Looking at what I've, my own life and talking to other women who've lived cross-culturally, it seems like to get to that place of being able and being willing to sit in this sense of belovedness, a lot of times it takes a crisis, and it takes us getting to this point where we're, like you mentioned, we're burned out, or we feel like we just can't take another step. And I wonder, what your ideas are of, like, helping women look at this and realize this before it gets to a crisis point, and how we can better do that.
Is burnout preventable?
That is the question, right? I think we want so deeply to prevent that. And yet somehow, in some way, at some point in our journey, we do have to come to the end of ourselves. And it's in it's in that space where we finally open and let go and release and find our utter dependence on God. And I think that happens in different ways. And I certainly think that fostering and cultivating your relationship with God to where you are listening to his voice and to his invitations, that's going to lead you to a good place and to a place of freedom. And so, as someone who cares for cross-cultural workers, like it is my natural tendency and desire to want to fix, help, prevent. And what the Lord has continually had to do in me is to release and hold space, and to trust that God actually knows what they're doing. And where I want to relieve pain and pressure, the Lord's saying, let me do what my spirit is doing. And we want to go straight from Egypt to the promised land. And the Lord often has a wilderness journey for us, and we want to skip over that. And we want to find the quickest route out of the wilderness. And the Lord says, I have something for you in the wilderness. And so to actually release ourselves to the wilderness actually releases a lot of the angst, right? Of like, I've got to be doing something to figure out how to get out of this. And whereas instead, if you release and say, all right, I'm here, I'm gonna be in the wilderness, and only the Lord knows the way out of this wilderness. And so I'm going to trust his timing. I'm going to trust his pace, and open to what he has for me. We're so conditioned to avoid discomfort and pain. And yet if we actually embrace it rather than resist it, stuff it down, avoid it, the Lord has transformation for us there.
I wonder, I really, there's a imaginative process that I like doing to help people kind of experience just a little bit of what it means to be beloved. So I wonder if we could close, if I could just walk us through that. And I'll invite whoever's listening to do the same, unless you're driving. Keep your eyes open if you're driving or running. But it's just this imaginative way of being, and very Ignatius, as you already mentioned. But I want you to, if you're comfortable, close your eyes and just picture yourself in Israel in Jesus's time, in a town. There's the noises of a market, camels and donkeys. If you've lived or traveled in the Middle East or North Africa, you can really picture what that's like. Not that much changed. Imagine what it would have been like to hear stories of this new guy, Jesus, or his cousin, John the Baptist, running around in the desert and preaching and doing crazy things. Your friends come up to you and gather you and say, hey, let's go see what's going on. And you start walking out to the river where John has been baptizing people. You don't even know what that means, but you've heard it and you're curious to find out more. It's a beautiful day. You feel the warmth of the sun, the breeze. There's palm trees along the river as you walk up. You see that a crowd's gathered and people are listening, and some people are just sitting in the shade. Others are knee deep in the water, staying cool. You keep walking closer and you notice that John the Baptist is in there, and he's talking and he's preaching, and he's looks a little crazy. His beard is really long, his hair is really wavy, and he's yelling really loud, but it's interesting. So you go closer. Then you see this man walking down with a group of guys behind him, and you hear the whispers in the crowd. That's Jesus. That's Jesus coming from Galilee. You've heard about Jesus, so this is really interesting. You move closer, maybe your toes dip in the water and it's cold and refreshing, and you can actually hear the conversation that's going on. You hear John saying, I can't baptize you. I'm not worthy to tie your sandals. You see Jesus, he puts his hand on John's shoulder and he says, John, come on. So you watch as John takes him, lowers him into the water, and brings him up. Then all of a sudden, it's as if every noise, every sound, everybody is gone. And you just hear a voice that somehow comes both from within you and without you. And it's the voice of God. It says, "This is my son, my beloved son, with whom I am well pleased." Imagine, where do you feel that in your body just watching this happen? God's voice speaking, acceptance. What would it be like to have a father willing to say that, "My beloved son"? Then all of a sudden you realize Jesus is looking straight at you, and I mean into your very heart of hearts. He's inviting you to come by him in the water. As you stand there with him, everybody else is kind of gone from this moment. It's just you and it's Jesus. He looks at you and he says, "Danielle, you are my beloved daughter. Brandi, you are my beloved daughter." Your name you hear coming out of his voice, comforted by the warmth of the sun, the cool of the river, and what it means to be touching the Messiah. Notice what it feels like in your body. Do you feel that warmth, the acceptance, the love so deep that there's no amount of anything you could have done, would have done, or should have done that can change the way that Jesus looks at you? You are his beloved son or daughter. Take a deep breath and open your eyes back into whatever space you are listening to this. And remember, you can access that anytime.
Thanks, James.
Little experience of belovedness.
Thank you, Danielle, for being with us today. Really.
And for doing and being with a lot of people, a lot of women around the world.
It's a joy. So great to be here with you and to be part of these really valuable conversations that you're offering.
Can you tell us how people can get in touch? And we'll put the links that you've sent, but how can people find Velvet Ashes and be a part of a group or a retreat? What would that look like?
Yeah. velvetashes.com is where you'll find all of our offerings. And so would love for you to connect with us there.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
The best season. And like James and our guests are always like, the audio looks robust, and then you get to mine, it's like beep, 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 beep. Whatever
Yes.
level of professionalism you experienced in your last podcast, ours is less. James, my
But
sister she started listening to our podcast, and she was describing it. She said, "Okay, the guy you work with is no nonsense, and you are all nonsense."
That sounds about right. Yeah.